3 games left for the Cincinnati Bengals and some serious injuries to talk about and the fallout thereof, in addition to a little bit of a playoff picture update heading into Week 16.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. We appreciate all of you who are everydayers and everyone who makes us their first listen. Today's episode brought to you by the Gametime app. You can use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase of last-minute tickets for the lowest price, guaranteed. And James, let's start with some injury notes. Since the last time we talked, it was confirmed that DJ Reader has the torn quad tendon. He will not be returning this year. DJ Ivey has the ACL injury. Really unfortunate for those guys. Hate to see it for both of those guys. Obviously, DJ Reader, we talked about in the contract year, all the things that go with that. Ivey, 7th-round pick coming into his own. But Jamar Chase has a chance to play this week after what was described as an AC joint injury. And so a few different big injuries to talk about there.
Yeah, none bigger than DJ Reader. It's awful. It's hard to see the path to them figuring out how to replace him. And I've been kind of racking my mind around different ideas. You mentioned TR Tart the other day. Who knows? As we record this, we don't know what's going to happen with him. Will he get claimed? Will he not? Will he become a free agent? I don't know. But I think the answer is that you can't replace him and that you're going to have a bunch of guys that are going to try to make up for it. And Lou Anarumo is going to have to find the right mix, the right cocktail to figure that out. Because if I'm the Steelers today, guess what? I'm attacking the middle of that defense. And it's up to Zach Carter and Sam Hubbard. Maybe move Sam inside a little bit more, even though they haven't, especially with Miles Murphy coming on. But maybe this is the perfect time to do that. Miles Murphy's coming on some. You move Sam inside some. That seems like the best option to me. But who knows? Because he's still not going to be DJ Reader, and you're not going to be able to do it as much as you would have Reader on the field anyway. So I think it'll be a mixture of things that could include potentially an outside addition, could include internal guys, practice squad guys. I know Dominique Davis is a fan favorite from the preseason, but there's no making up for the loss of DJ Reader, and it just sucks.
And even if Sam Hubbard is playing more inside, like you said, I mean, that's totally different positions and a difference of at least 60 pounds, if not more, between those two guys. I mean, Sam Hubbard, great edge run defender, but that's pretty different from taking on a guard and a center or a guard and a tackle on a double team and splitting a double team or anchoring against a double team and different stuff we're talking about for those two positions. To your point, though, just as a matter of curiosity, Sam Hubbard has played, and this is a generous count, a position that isn't outside the right tackle of the opposing offense 20 times this year out of 600 snaps. So for all we've talked about, getting Miles Murphy on the field more, Sam Hubbard moving inside more, all this stuff, they don't do it. Sam Hubbard continues to play the left defensive end position, and they continue to try different guys inside with BJ Hill in those third down packages. Last week it was Cam Sample. And maybe Miles Murphy should be on the field more because he has been the team's second best pass rusher in terms of actually creating. DJ Reader, while he was playing, was a great pocket pusher, and they're going to have to replace that too. And maybe BJ Hill continues to step up in what has been a late season surge there. But what is more concerning than those aspects, the pass rushing aspect, is definitely how they're going to deal with the run game. The splits with DJ Reader on and off the field over the last few years have been stark. The Bengals run defense, even with DJ Reader, has struggled this year. Without him, It's hard to imagine it getting better without throwing more resources at it, which makes you more vulnerable in other ways, which we saw last week with like the play action dump off to the running back in the flat where the Bengals have to sell out on the run and then they get an explosive play on a little play action flat. So something has to improve there or something will give without DJ Reader, but we'll see what happens, right? This is going to be more playing time for Zach Carter. Probably means J2 Fele, at least in the short term, is active and maybe Dominique Davis as well, right? And those guys will have to play better. And we've seen them playing better. They're part of a group that has stepped up a little bit in the Jake Browning era in particular, but losing DJ Reader, obviously hard to understate or overstate. Hard to overstate the impact of that loss for this team, and it's something they'll have to overcome down the stretch, in addition to potentially a Jamar Chase injury. So if you're talking about Jamar missing time and DJ missing time, you've already lost Joe Burrow for the season. How much can this team take and overcome when you're talking about three of their best players that make the team go, potentially missing time down the stretch?
Jamar it's hard to figure out a path to them being able to overcome this without Jamar. Now, maybe it's just one game, and then so you can make that case. But I mean over the next 3 weeks, because we'll go over it in the playoff scenarios. Yeah, they won this week, and they're in if it ended today. But the road is not over. They need to win and keep winning. And having Jamar out there, we know what he does, the impact he has. And so hopefully he can give it a go. Even if he's 70%, hopefully he can give it a go. It's that time of year. As unfortunate as it is to play injured or play hurt, if he can do it, they need him. And they need him because they're already shorthanded. And you can only do so much when you're a team that's relying on these guys to make plays. And T. Higgins came up big, and I have no doubt that he can continue to come up big. But it's not just that. It's the ripple effect that not having Jamar has. So now T is double teamed. And it's Trenton Irwin one-on-one on a guy to have it play instead of Tyler Boyd or instead of T. Higgins. And that makes it tough. So hopefully Jamar can be out there. We'll see. We won't know more until the Bengals practice on Tuesday afternoon and that practice report comes out. But having Jamar, I'm not saying it's a must because I've seen this team overcome. I do think it's a must for them to make the playoffs over the next 3 weeks. I don't think you can go 3 games without Jamar. And I don't think it's going to be that. Zach Taylor said it was day to day. But I don't think you can overcome it. So how much is too much? I think that is too much over 3 games. If it's 1, who knows? Maybe they could go to Pittsburgh and win with the weird quarterback saga that we'll get to coming up in a bit that's going on right now in the Steel City.
Yeah, it's the compound effect of Burrow, Reader, Chase. I mean, the defensive side of the ball is still going to have to be a team effort, but also Cam Taylor-Britt, another guy that we haven't mentioned, going to miss at least another week before he's eligible to return for week 17, which is the earliest he could return if he's ready to go at that point. Yeah, they're going to have to have guys step up, and we'll see about Jamar. There is a chance that he plays this week. It wasn't the worst news that it could have been, and when Zach says somebody is day-to-day, that is notably different from when Zach says somebody is week-to-week. And that means they're not going to be back imminently. But with Jamar Chase, I think there's a chance. You mentioned, by the way, Trenton Irwin instead of Jamar Chase. It is worth pointing out that Andre Yosevach did outsnap Trenton Irwin last week by 8. So 18-10.
Point still stands.
Yeah,
Andre Yosevach will win. Yeah, I know you do. I know you know. But like, it's still the ripple effect. Even though I like Yoshi and I think he can make plays. It's just a lot to ask. That's all.
Incidentally, just while I'm looking at this, and then we'll move on. Charlie Jones also, he had 3 targets last week. He caught 2 of them. One of them could have been a touchdown. We've talked about that play. He had 4 snaps on offense, and he had 3 targets. All 3 of the passing plays he was on the field for, he was targeted. So how about that for volume per snap for Charlie Jones? Coming up next, the playoff picture is currently rosy for the Cincinnati Bengals, but when you look forward, it does, as you mentioned, James, get murky. This team needs to continue to win. We'll talk about that playoff picture coming up next. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Gametime knows that if you want tickets for the Bengals' last home game this year, you shouldn't have to worry. It shouldn't be stressful. It should be easy. It should be fast. You should be stress-free. You should know exactly what you're getting. You should have peace of mind. And Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. That's why we love it so much. Between their last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and if it's not the Bengals, they have you covered too. Just check it out. They have tickets for all sorts of events, but easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. I love that you can see the view from your seats right in the app, so you know exactly what you're going to see. Love the best price guarantee we've talked about, where if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of that price difference. So right now you can get $20 off your first order of tickets with the Gametime app using promo code Locked On NFL. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today for last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Today's show is also brought to you by Schultz Jewelers. Schultz Jewelers is the place you have to get to right now. Christmas is a week away as we record this on Monday afternoon, and Schultz Jewelers, well, they have the perfect diamond for you. Maybe you're looking for that engagement ring, but you don't want to break the bank. I get it, which is why you go there, you get one of their lab-grown diamonds. You can get her that dream ring that you're hoping to without hurting your wallet. They have unique custom designs, top-rated permanent jewelry. There really isn't anyone like them in the area. And the cherry on top is the fact that Matt Schultz is a die-hard Bengals fan, and he's as experienced as anyone. Schultz Jewelers has been around for 70-plus years. Go there today. They are at 2202 Dixie Highway in Fort Mitchell, just 5 minutes from the bridge into Kentucky. You can also check them out online at schultzdiamonds.com. That's SCHULZ diamonds.com. We know the Bengals strive for perfection. Schultz Jewelers does too. Because when it has to be perfect, it has to be Schultz Jewelers.
Let's talk playoff scenarios, James. The Bengals have done their job the last 3 weeks to stay squarely in this conversation. 3 weeks ago, when the Bengals won their first game with Jake Browning, I asked a question on this podcast. Should we be talking about the playoffs? And we said at the time, well, maybe if they win a couple more games, and they have won a couple more games, we can really dig into it. And as of today, regardless of what happens in an NFC matchup on Monday Night Football, the Cincinnati Bengals are the 6th seed in the AFC. A lot can change. A lot can change when you look at the schedules of the teams they're competing with the rest of the way.
A lot can, and it stinks because a lot of things didn't go their way, and it looked like they were going to. The Bears stink. Justin Fields, how about you make a play? And
or Darnell Mooney.
They blow that game. Sure, it shouldn't come down to that.
No.
But yeah, Darnell Mooney. Jake Lisco would have caught that one, Darnell. What are you doing? So, I mean, you're literally laying on your back. Like our listeners catch that ball. It's the easiest catch ever. Anyways, instead he kicked it. Soccer player kicked it into the air and it was intercepted. Anyways, it seemed like any game that was going to go against what the Bengals needed did. Outside of the Ravens, I guess, ending the Bengals AFC North chances. They weren't winning the division anyway, so who cares? But sort of helping. You want the Jags to slide back and not win that AFC South. That would help if the Texans could emerge in the South. But it's a tight race, and the easiest thing, and I get why Zach Taylor is saying this, because if I was in that locker room, I wouldn't really be looking at the scenarios. I'd be saying, all right, we just got to win. Because if you don't win, someone's going to pass you. It's guaranteed. And so you just got to find a way to keep winning. And they've done that over the past 3 weeks to their credit. And it has to continue on Saturday.
Yeah, the muddled middle of the AFC right now consists of so many teams in such similar situations. I was looking at this last night, and the path, I'm not saying this is likely per se, but it is certainly possible. The path to 5+ teams in the AFC being 10-7 is wide open. Buffalo needs 2 wins out of their last 3. They finished 10-7. Cleveland just needs 1 win out of their last 3 to get to 10-7. Houston, 2 wins gets them to 10-7. Indy needs 2 wins to get to 10-7. Denver needs to win all 3 to get to 10-7. Cincinnati, of course, needs 2 wins to get to 10-7 as well. You could see 5+ teams at 10-7. Not saying it's likely to happen, but you could see it. It's well within the realm of possibility that this could happen. Of course, likely some of these teams win more or less games than exactly the amount of games they need to get to 10-7. But if that were to happen, the tiebreakers are not good for the Bengals, because all these head-to-head tiebreakers that you would think would be good for them with these teams in the playoff race, really talking about Indy and Jacksonville, wouldn't matter. It'll come down to conference record, or it'll come down to division record. And with these teams, if the Bengals are in a tie with them at 10-7, they almost certainly lose those tiebreakers. So to your point, talking about what Zach Taylor said about not looking at the scenarios, one, they're incredibly complicated. With 3 weeks to play, and the amount of things that can happen in 3 weeks, be it injuries, upsets, whatever it is, that totally change our perception of the Bengals' hypothetical road to the playoffs, or potential road to the playoffs. One, a lot can change. Two, it's unpredictable. Three, like you said, if they just win, that's the simplest way from a math perspective, from a playoff scenario perspective. It's also the hardest way, because they have to win all their games.
Yeah.
So simple, not always easy, but from a scenario perspective, yeah, the easiest way to sort it all out is just go win.
And I really don't remember a playoff race like this one, where there were so many teams in the mix. I mean, we're 24 hours removed from Aaron Rodgers saying he could still play, which is first off, the dumbest thing ever, because the Jets were never making the playoffs, and I'm glad that's over. But it's just crazy that there are so many teams in the mix. I think I will say this: there aren't many teams that make the playoffs despite being 1-5 in the division. And if the Bengals win the next 2, they could realistically get in with 10 wins, which I've said 10 wins is your goal. But that's still weird to me. And yet there's an actual chance where that is the case, where that Cleveland game could not matter. Maybe you drop Pittsburgh and then you win the next 2 and you get into the playoffs with a 1-5 record in the AFC North. It's just really weird. And I think that kind of tells the story as much as anything. Ideally, you would obviously be 2-4 in the AFC North, handle business against the Browns, handle business against the Steelers, and give yourself a chance to beat up Taylor Swift's Kansas City Chiefs on New Year's Eve.
But even if they are 2-4 in the division, if division tiebreakers come up, they lose all of them. So you need the wins, but you get then to the tiebreakers, and then 2-4 is, if it comes up, not good enough.
If you beat the Steelers, they're done.
Yes.
Eliminated.
And they're all but eliminated, realistically.
No doubt.
At this point,
in their heads, they're thinking, let's win out. Maybe we have a shot.
Yeah.
But you beat them on Saturday, you end it. And that's why I think this game is going to be really tough. The Steelers have their backs against the wall, and it's it or nothing. And we're going to go over it in a second. They're shorthanded, like the Bengals. They're going to be dealing with some injuries that are important. And I think that also is another reason why it would be really nice to have Jamar Chase on the field on Sunday, Jake, or Saturday. These Saturday games are making me angry on Saturday.
It's the last one.
It's just natural to say Sunday. I don't mind games being on Saturday, but
it's weird. It's weird. I mind just like a little bit. It's weird. Football should be on Sunday. We don't need to get into that too much here. The head-to-head tiebreakers, by the way, I mentioned they don't necessarily matter. They could come up. And so the fact that the Bengals did beat the Colts, the Bills, the Jaguars, if it does come down to head-to-head tiebreakers, that's great. And like you said, James, you want to avoid the head-to-head tiebreaker with the Texans. So there are scenarios where those games could matter. So I don't want people to think that those head-to-head tiebreakers don't matter at all. For example, right now, the reason the Bengals are the 6th seed in a conference with 5 teams at 8-6, Jacksonville currently leading their division in the AFC South with 2 other teams in the AFC South at 8-6, is because as of today, having the head-to-head tiebreakers over Buffalo and Indy puts them at 6 instead of out of the playoffs, because they do matter in the scenario that is occurring in this moment today, but they don't necessarily matter at the end of the season, depending on how things go, which is perhaps why talking about the specific scenarios is a little premature. The Steelers have announced a quarterback change. We will talk about that and what that could mean for this game to finish the show coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools that you need to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates, so easy that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, it's quick, it's easy, and you're going to think it's such a breeze with LinkedIn Jobs. And right now, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's right, for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
James, we're going to tomorrow get into some more of the takeaways from the Bengals' previous Saturday game before this Saturday game coming up. So if you're wondering why we're not talking more about what the Bengals did after DJ Reader left the game on the interior defensive line, or how they adapted when Jamar Chase left the game and they still managed to get that win, we'll cover some of those topics in addition to how the scheme was different and how maybe some of the previous declarations or distinctions between the Browning offense and the Burrow offense have been a little overstated. We'll have time to get to that this week. But today, some drama in Pittsburgh.
Ooh.
And some of this is about the quarterback position, but there's even more since
There
we
is.
started recording this episode that we'll talk
I
about
got you.
as well. But the where we're going to start is Mason Rudolph will start at quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers if Kenny Pickett is not available. But Mike Tomlin did leave the door open for Kenny Pickett this week. It seems like a long shot today. We'll see. Obviously, a lot can change between now and Saturday. The previous reporting was that they were hopeful to get him back for Seattle, and that would be next week. But Tomlin did say that he would categorize Pickett as questionable this week. The bigger note is that they are done with the Mitchell Trubisky experience and are going back to the Mason Rudolph experience, which doesn't seem to offer much greener pastures, but that's where the Steelers are right now.
Quick story. Once upon a time, a general manager named Sashi Brown, who is no longer in the NFL, wanted to draft Mitch Trubisky to the Cleveland Browns number 1 overall instead of Myles Garrett. I wish he would have done it. Yeah, it's going to be Mason Rudolph. And if it isn't Kenny Pickett, which is weird. The whole thing's weird. If I was Mike Tomlin, I would have left it wide open and just said that Pickett was questionable. Instead, he says, oh, no, Mason's the starter. And then Pickett's questionable. And that's literally how it went in his news conference. So we'll see. The other injuries of note, and this is why it would be mighty, mighty nice to have that man, Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins, is Minkah Fitzpatrick is out for Saturday's game, will not play. That's huge. And DeMonte Kazee, I think it's Kazee, was suspended as well without pay for the rest of the season following a hit that he had in the Colts game against Michael Pittman Jr. So that just came out a few minutes ago as we recorded this on Monday afternoon. That's a big deal, I think, not having those two guys because their backs are against the wall. And I think that's why Pickett is questionable, because if they lose this game, it's over. If he can give it a go, why not get your best option out there on the field, which he clearly is their best option at QB.
And Mason Rudolph isn't good, but
it's Rudolph time, baby. Come on, Rudolph. He's 2-0 against the Bengals. I looked it up.
Yeah, we've seen the Bengals have issues with backup quarterbacks, but they've won 2 in a row against backup quarterbacks that are now starting for their respective teams.
He's also 2-0 against the 2019 team. That's where he got his 2 wins. His second win against the Bengals, it was 16-10, by the way. Ugly game in 2019. He was 8 of 16 in that game. Against that Bengals defense in 2019. Yeah.
The Bengals and Steelers playing an ugly game? No.
In 2019, though. Like, you couldn't beat up on that defense, Mason? No. I mean.
Well, and there's an opportunity against this defense, too, as we've seen. Nick Mullins just beat up on this defense, given there is a Justin Jefferson on that offense and a much better offensive line on that offense. And Nick Mullins is probably, honestly, a better option than Mason Rudolph. But that doesn't mean Mason Rudolph can't go out there and make plays. We've seen it happen before. We've seen the Mike White experience, and we've seen what Jake Browning has done, frankly, coming out of nowhere to play pretty good football the last 3 weeks. And certainly good enough for the Bengals to win. But without DeMonte Kazee or Kazee, I'm not sure how that name is pronounced either, Micah Fitzpatrick, this defense for the Steelers is Joey Porter Jr. in the secondary, a late career Patrick Peterson, and some backup safeties. There's certainly some vulnerabilities in that secondary. At that point, there's a vulnerability at quarterback, even if Kenny Pickett plays, quite frankly. No matter who plays quarterback for the Steelers, there's a vulnerability at quarterback. And you're talking about a team that's TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, and friends. And that's what the Steelers are. I mean, the Steelers, Chris Carter on Locked On Steelers just spent an episode talking about paths forward with and without Mike Tomlin and potential head coach replacements. Like, that's where the Steelers are right now when Mike Tomlin's in danger with a bad team of going under 500 potentially for the first time ever. And I mean, there's a little bit of concern about Mike Tomlin voodoo magic at this point in the season, threatening to not go over 500 or at least 500, threatening to have a losing season for the first time in his career. It's about time for that Mike Tomlin voodoo magic to kick in. But these absences and changes on the Steelers secondary and on the at the Steelers quarterback position could certainly be impactful here as we look at this game early in the week.
Yeah, it could. And it's just a reminder. You're right. It's such a week-to-week league. I think the Vikings element of this, let's just use that. As bad as the Steelers, as it feels for the Steelers right now, the Vikings had won 3-0, and they beat the Raiders 3-0, and then the Raiders came out and did what on Thursday Night Football? The Bengals, it felt like it was over after losing to the Steelers team, and since then they've won 3 games in 12 days, and they're right back in the thick of the playoff race. So I expect Saturday to be a heck of a game. It's going to be a tough one, and it's one that I'm excited to track Jamar Chase's injury. Hopefully he can bounce back and be healthy enough to play and cover it this week ahead of the game. It should be a good one. Hopefully Jake Browning gives us 1 or 2 more one-liners. You saw the video, right? The Bengals released it. That's the best video I've ever seen in my life.
Hyped.
I mean, the best. The helmet toss, the fact that the Bengals added the audio behind it just for dramatic effect, just staring into the camera. I love it. And you better believe you're going to see that plenty before their game on Saturday. I'm sure the Bengals have already sent the footage to NFL Films and CBS.
The confidence of Jake Browning has showed up in these games. Against the Vikings, it was late in the game. It was after he played a pretty bad 2.5 quarters, after he threw a really, really bad interception, and then he came out and was on fire down the stretch, making difficult plays down the field. Still had a lot of passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. It turned out I was surprised at the volume of at or behind line of scrimmage passes for Browning in that game, but was way better throwing down the field, and that confidence is something that he'll need going against a Pittsburgh team that handled him the last time these teams played. And he'll need to play better. Hopefully the experience, the game has slowed down for him a little bit. Hopefully after 4 games of starting in the NFL and having seen this defense before, settling into an offense that doesn't feature nearly as much empty. Hopefully these things can help this time around. The last note that I'll throw out there, you're talking about it being a week-to-week league. One of the factors there, I know both of those games were at home for Las Vegas, going 3-0, then 63-21. But the home road splits in the NFL this year I was looking at earlier today, and they're dramatic for a number of teams. Notably, the Cleveland Browns were one of them. The Cleveland Browns at home this year haven't lost, and on the road are 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the Bengals' remaining games, of course. Vegas, another one that's very interesting and is related to the Bengals' playoff push, as it were. 5-3 at home versus 1-5 on the road. The most relevant game in that regard for the Bengals is that week 18 game for Vegas is Denver in Vegas, where Vegas plays much better. Certainly not a team that has been good this year, but a team that has been much better at home. So just some interesting things on the home road splits. We'll see how that plays out for the Bengals here down the stretch as well, with 2 straight road games, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, before returning home for the finale against a Cleveland team that has been very bad on the road. A lot of things in the air, from injuries, home road splits, unpredictability of the week-to-week nature of the NFL in the first place, and the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh. Should be an interesting week. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to spend one more day on the Vikings game and what film takeaways we have to talk about, both from individuals to scheme. And then we'll get into our first look at the Steelers contest with Chris Carter before our game preview later this week. So until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.